I'm Julie Legg, author of The Missing Piece and diagnosed with ADHD at 52.
And I'm Gel Legg, diagnosed at 55.
Welcome to ADH Difference. In today's episode, we'll be talking about masking in relation to ADHD. So what is masking? Why do we mask? When are we likely to mask? What is the result of masking? And what goes wrong when we mask too much? Well, we'll start with that at least. So let's talk about masking itself. How would you describe the act of masking, Gel?
Yeah, it's not revealing how you really feel in a situation. It's covering up, putting on a false front, whether it's a smile or being quiet and just not being yourself in a social or work business situation where it's not probably a good idea to be yourself. So you're playing by other people's rules, and particularly their rules of engagement.
And sometimes it's intentional because we don't want to stand out. We'd rather blend in and be this chameleon and just blend in. At other times, we don't actually know that we're doing it. And I think the more often you mask, the more second nature it becomes, and you can find yourself masking in situations where there is really no need to.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you become aware you're masking, actually, that's I think where the anxiety and the stress kicks in, and you're looking for the bolt hole, the escape exit as fast as possible. Or it is quite possible to not even be aware you're masking. And this can go on in relationships for years sometimes, perhaps. And it leads to quite shallow relationships, or relationships that don't have the value they could have. So when it comes to masking, is it our fault for masking? Should we not mask, or is it other people's fault for refusing or not being interested in who we really are and what we've really got to say?
That's a really interesting question, because I think it's a combination of all of those things. I think initially masking for girls, if we can go back to our younger selves, because the word masking, we never used that. We didn't really know what it was until our ADHD diagnosis. And then we had a name to put towards this type of behaviour or feeling that we had in our past, and we realised how frequently we had actually masked ourselves. So I think as girls in particular, because they're more likely to be covert in trying to hide their ADHD symptoms, they don't know that they're ADHD symptoms, but they know, or they get a sense that they're not quite accepted by peers or by, teachers in the classroom or family members or whatever it may be. And so they adapt pretty quickly to try and people please and not to stand out. I'd like to hear some of your experiences as a younger child, Gel. I think boys tend to be more overt with their ADHD traits. And so they're more likely to be outspoken, perhaps, whereas girls might take the defense stance of just being quiet and not expressing their feelings, for example.
Yeah, I had, just thinking back at school, actually, particularly, all school years, but in high school, I'd have opinions on things that weren't appropriate. And when I unmasked and expressed those opinions, I either got in a few detentions or a fair bit of trouble, or sometimes I just shocked the teacher so much they couldn't believe it was being said. They weren't rude things. I do remember an example in an English literature class where we were studying 19th century romantic literature, and this was a requirement. It wasn't a choice. I'm thinking, what the heck are we doing this for? We should be learning how to wire plugs or do something practical that could be really safe and sensible, and so that we don't electrocute ourselves in the future, which, it doesn't really go down too well with the English teacher. However, I got away with that one, but that's you get this sense of something that's just stupid and wrong, and you shouldn't be doing it, whether you're forced to or obliged to. And for me, unmasking is just coming out with something and saying something that sometimes it's designed to shock, sometimes it's designed to just shake up the atmosphere because it's so boring and inane, and sometimes it's a genuine thought that I think it's quite a good idea, but it's just inappropriate. And so you go back to masking. You learn as a child quickly that actually just keep quiet. There's no point in saying those things, or learn when to air those opinions. There's no one's interested.
It is interesting. And I think, so you come back to whose fault is it? Is it us as a child for not being true to ourselves, or is it other people's fault for not listening or accepting us for who we are? Well, I think it's probably a combination of both, because the standard narrative these days, for example, in a classroom, is that you all sit still in your chairs and you sit for an hour and you read, and everyone's to do that. So damn you if you have ADHD and don't know it and find sitting still quite a painful experience when you want to get up and wriggle, or perhaps you're looking out the window at the birds flying past as opposed to reading your book. And these stand out as unacceptable types of behaviours. And so after being pulled up so many times, we just learn little tricks, I guess, and they're not necessarily positive ones, but we learn ways of not being singled out. I remember in primary school, I had an interesting group of friends, I will call them. I never really fitted in to any group particularly, but there was one, the leader was quite a vivacious, loud and quite young girl. Basically, she ordered everybody around and everybody listened and did as they were told. But I remember being very, very quiet and not wanting to come up and confront her with anything because she was the leader, and you just don't do those things. That wasn't a polite thing to do. Anyway, she was belittling me in front of the broader group of friends. And little old quiet me stood up and gave her an absolute bollocking, I will say, and as a term insofar as I told her what I really thought. And everybody turned and laughed at me, which was the most devastating thing. That wasn't the response I wanted. I don't know what response I wanted, but being laughed at wasn't good. But they were laughing because they thought I was a quiet mouse. They didn't know that there was another side of me. And this is getting back to the masking thing. After being quiet and conservative in their presence for so long, they didn't know there was another side of me. And when that came out, unfiltered, unmasked, it gave them a shock. So, when you mask for so long, those sorts of things can happen. I mean, the mask takes a lot of energy to wear, and no, it's not a physical mask, but it takes a lot of energy to keep a straight face or continue to look like you're listening or nod or be agreeable in a work situation, for example, when you'd rather, be chewing your arm off than sit through a particular meeting.
Yeah, it's excuse me. Thinking back on some work situations when I was actually in spaces with other people, which I've done for a long time. Yes, if I built up, if I found myself masking with someone whose attitude or approach I didn't agree with, that might ride for weeks, months, years sometimes, and it would build up and build up. And if a moment came when I was triggered, unfortunately for them, and this isn't very professional, I would let both barrels off and a couple of more spare shotguns with barrels, and then whatever other armory I had, I would just deliver everything, and I would go for the jugular. And it wasn't really fair, because what happened was when the mask comes off, there's the truth. There's what I've been thinking for a long time. Rather than dealing with it bit by bit and establishing a better relationship or working through things I wasn't happy with, sometimes it was with people in positions of power. Might be very senior management. And when I let rip, they just didn't know what to do, because they were used to often bullying people. And when someone stands up and throws it back at them, you often find out, most bullies are cowards. But it's never a good feeling. It's never a nice feeling. It's never good to get to that point. But I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but I just still mask. And so how to avoid masking and getting into that potential conflict situation generally for me is to avoid being around those people face to face. Having a certain detachment, in my case for years now, working remotely away from people, gives me a moment or a sort of fireball, effectively, not to have to fire back at them. There's a whole difference to what comes out of your mouth compared with what you might write down and then just consider before you send.
That's really interesting because, we've talked about strategies in various episodes. Now, that strategy works for you insofar as you're not putting yourself in a position where you feel you have to mask, but also it's not necessarily a winning strategy insofar as you have to remove yourself away from situations that otherwise could provide you a friendship base, or you know what I mean? It deprives you from certain situations.
I think we've often spoken about one of the key things that's really important to us in terms of a value is fairness. Justice, fairness, similar really, but certainly fairness in terms of, and that's where masking really, really is a dangerous thing to do, because if we perceive something as unfair, we'll flip. And when we flip, we're fighting for fairness. I lost my first job, full-time job, fighting in a split second. I unmasked and I told the boss where to go because he had been unreasonable in saying how long I'd had for my smoke tea break. And I didn't have the wisdom to think, okay, in this split second, I can just go, oh, take it on the chin and walk away. So my entire life turned upside down. The people I was working with, my social group, because I unmasked in that split second. I still don't regret it. It was wrong. But, pride comes before a fall. And so throughout life, you will do things and say things that cause quite a bit of self-damage in a way. And I'm not honestly sure that wisdom and age is a guarantee of not still doing it from time to time.
And we're talking about masking. The conversation so far has been our experience when we were undiagnosed with ADHD. So, we would try and fit in, would go with the flow. We thought that was a good thing until it wasn't. And then our undiagnosed ADHD traits would spark, and I call them trip hazards, but it might be impatience or this sense of fairness or self-defense, with our difficulty regulating some of those kind of emotions, that's when it's likely to spill over. Now we have been diagnosed and we have a name for it, and we call it masking. We're able now to look back and identify those times where we masked a lot. Going forward, it may or may not change how much we mask. You say you still do to a certain extent. If I do catch myself masking, I do question myself why. And if you've got lots of time in the world to contemplate your whys, it's a really interesting experience. Why am I toning myself down in the presence of this person? Am I doing it for their benefit or my benefit? Or why can't I be myself? Why can't I be brave enough to actually say gracefully what I need to say, and take the chance that they will either accept it or reject it, but it's a discussion, so I think maybe knowing we can be braver.
It's a risk reward situation every moment, and depending on who you're with, you've got to look at that and go, what's the risk of demanding what you're demanding? Why can't I be myself? Unfortunately, in so many situations, we all do need to mask. I think that's why we both say we really enjoy the short-term, fleeting company of strangers and meeting strange people. Not strange people, strangers. Well, strange people are fun too. In a brief split moment, whether it's 20 seconds or 20 minutes or sometimes a whole day, whatever, you can really enjoy someone who's full of energy and get to know things about them and share things with nothing to lose, no long-term commitment. And it can be
and
huge
also,
fun.
and no expectation.
No expectations
either,
and prejudgment and so
there's
forth.
no backstory.
Yes.
So, well, last time I saw you were a different kind of a person.
Yes.
I'm confused. Who are you today?
Yeah.
I also think I experienced this masking before my first marriage ended, or around that time. I looked at my life and I thought, I don't dress like that. What I've got a sensible haircut. I've never had a sensible haircut. I'm hanging out with these groups of people doing these sorts of things. That's actually not my interest. I don't really enjoy sports. I really enjoy the creative side of my life. Why am I going to rugby matches? How did I end up here dressing this way, talking this way? Where have I gone? And that was quite a sad conclusion to have, and then to go, well, where am I? No, I'm still there, but I've just hidden myself from everyone, and including myself to an extent. And so that was a big thing to go. No, I've got to come back to me again.
But I think we all of us will have those times in lives, and sometimes they're moments, and sometimes they're years. We all are capable, end up, for whatever perfectly good set of reasons, finding ourselves in a relationship or a job or a space that's completely wrong for us. But there's lots of reasons. But then it takes such an enormous amount of energy then to say, no, this is wrong, and get out of that situation. That's massive. That turns your life upside down, and risk reward kicks in big time. On a less dramatic level, I'm just thinking, boring conversation is where I will mask the most. If I'm with a bunch of people who cannot have a conversation that can go anywhere below just the surface of inane subjects, or people throwing out a comment or a throwaway line that seems to shut the conversation down, that's that, and that's how it is. We're not talking about that anymore. I will mask and mask and mask and mask, because my brain is firing, absolutely firing. It wants to challenge that. It wants to go deeper in that. So why do you say that? Come on, let's have a great conversation. Let's go into battle with this. But you can't. I'm thinking of social situations where it's completely inappropriate. So you can't, and you don't do it. And so that's when the mask, for me, really kicks in. And I just can almost be a camera in the corner watching myself going, who's that person? It's almost like an out-of-body experience. And then I just completely shut down until the second I can get out of there. Because in the process of shutting down and masking, the last thing I want to do is have conflict, be rude. But now I have to be smiley and engaging. And so the masking isn't just a blank face of looking miserable. It's putting on a mask. It's not like covering up your face. It's replacing it with another one. So this face now is the smiley face and the interested. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so how's that? This year are you this? I'm not interested at all in this, but I'm having the conversation because we're going through the process.
I wanted to also talk about the iceberg theory. And so this was first coined by Ernest Hemingway as a journalist and a writer. And it's been adapted. Freud has adapted it, and then everyone's adapted the iceberg theory. But it's pretty much, as an iceberg does, about 1/8 of it is only ever seen on top of the surface of the water. It shows what you can see, but there's a heck of a lot you can't see. And what's underneath the surface is very complex. But generally, the truth lies beneath the surface. And so for ADHD, I think we often experience this perception, how other people may perceive us. And with masking, at work, for example, they may perceive us as very organised, happy-go-lucky, and a team player. But what is hiding beneath the surface is that the frustration, perhaps emotional dysregulation, chaos, while you might be great at organising things at work, it's to the detriment of your home life, where, you forget to wash your clothes and defrost something for dinner, and the house is a muck, and you've forgotten your warrant of fitness, and the bills haven't been paid. And so what people perceive of you is only a small part of you. And I think this is where, again, masking can give a false impression of your true self. I think in every episode I've brought up a walking contradiction, and that's how I feel. I can be both super organised and chaotic at the same time, and they go hand in hand, and it's which one are you going to see? And it depends what time of the day that is, where you've caught me. It's just, I can be hugely energetic, and then I can be very reclusive again within minutes, depending on what you see. And I think it can confuse people. And so even sort of close acquaintances or friends, if you want to call them that, or family members, if they've only ever seen you in one light, when the mask breaks or falls off or is worn off, or you actually take it off and be yourself, your truth can be quite a surprise. You might not be the happy-go-lucky person that everyone thinks you may be, or it's the other way around. You could be this vivacious, free-spirited character that's been dying to get out, but you felt you've had to be conservative to match other people's expectations. So, yeah, it is interesting. And I don't know if there is a one-size-fits-all answer to masking and unmasking, because I think unmasking, for me, I need to be in a space where I am free to be me, and that means there's no one out to judge me, that they can equal the vulnerability that I'm showing being me. And I think it's like, show me yours, I'll show you mine. And with regards to, if you can all unmask and be your true selves, at least you know what you're dealing with. When you've got two people masking, you don't really know, it's a strange one. I think some relationships are like that, aren't they? Where you're not quite sure actually what you're dealing with. It's all very confusing.
There's a danger, though. I think you probably come across this a fair bit. There's a danger we can be known as being two-faced or not really. I don't like that. It's an old expression, but literally, you don't know who you're dealing with us sometimes. Secretive. It's not. We really are incredibly open people that can wear our hearts on our sleeves all the time, but that doesn't function well in most scenarios. So I think everyone masks. Everyone has to mask at some point, with or without ADHD. It's just, as an ADHD trait, it's particularly pertinent to us. It's something that perhaps we do more and have to do more than neurotypicals, who just see it as part of life. They've got my work face. I've got my face for when I'm talking to the kids. I've got my romantic face. I've got, and so forth, my sport face. But no, for us, it's kind of much deeper than that. It's much deeper. It's all because of the way our brains are firing off all the time. These ideas and thoughts are bouncing around constantly, and a need to want to just blurt out something, not to be shocking, but to say, hey, the reality is this. Think about it like this. Stop wasting time saying that. Do this. Whoa, that mask just slipped. A little aggressive there. Where are you coming from? Oh, you're just talking rubbish. Talk to me like that. Oops, now I'm in real big trouble. And on it goes, So,
yeah. No, I thought of two things, and I should have a pen so I can write down my thoughts, because with the millions of thoughts going around in my head, I've got two things I want to talk about, and I guarantee I'll forget the second one. Anyway, the first one was lyrics to a song we had written a while back, and it was about being accepted for as yourself. And it was, I draw my strength, you draw your sword. And it's being I'm drawing my strength to be myself and vulnerable in front of you. And if I sense you're drawing your sword and going to battle with me for being myself, that's likely to push us back down underwater again, or to find another mask.
So your mask is your protection there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's your armour.
Yeah. So to unmask is you really want to be with people, anyone who is unjudgmental. We talk about those people who enable you, who celebrate you, who don't just tolerate you, who genuinely celebrate you, who want to hear all those stories, who want to hear these amazing outside of the box ideas and new entrepreneurial business ideas and get excited by the possibilities. They're the kind of people you're more likely to unmask around, and it's a very good banter and such a good feeling. Such a good feeling.
And I bet you can't remember the second thing. See, there you go, ADHD. The first one was the lyric. I draw my strength, you draw your sword.
Yes.
See, there you go. Your brain's firing off, and you can't remember the second one, and that's brilliant.
No,
it's
it's
think of the third one.
No, well, exactly.
You see what we did there?
Yeah, I'll flag the second one. Although I guarantee at some point it's going to fly through. My brain waves. But talking about music, I'll bring in the third one then, and that was we actually did write a song called Iceberg, and it was about that. We called it 10% is all you'll see of me. It's actually 1/8. But
did we get that wrong? Okay.
Yes, let's not. It doesn't quite, sing the same way, doesn't it? 1/8. You'll only see 1/8 of me. Exactly. But again, that's just about the complexities. And if you're brave enough, come below the surface and meet me.
Yeah, because of course. Everyone knows the tragedy of the Titanic. It's what you don't see below the surface that can sink you. And so, a lot of people don't want to know what's below the surface of us folks with ADHD or all sorts of maybe neurodiversity. But it's what's below the surface that can be the magic stuff. That's where we really live. That's where we thrive. That's where the best of us is. Yeah.
I think I've got a little feeling. Also being brave to unmask is that with our ADHD brains and how we view things, and we often talk about problem solving and ideas and maybe what might seem a bit random, but just a different way of thinking. If we are forever that person, and I think we're always coming up with different to the norm.
We can't be anyone else, can we?
Correct.
No.
Although after a while, because we've got a super sense of other people's body language and might be a raised eyebrow yet again. Oh, here's another idea. Oh, it was almost as we've become the devil's advocate, which is cute a few times, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, why can't you just agree with the status quo? We've all agreed that this is the strategy going forward. And we go, yeah, but you're missing something. Don't you think we should consider? And so when we are ourselves, and that's kind of beaten down, that can almost hinder the process of fully unmasking too, I think sometimes. But, we're human, and it's not like we're right all the time. So we do need to deal with criticism, and we do need to deal with all sorts of things. But I think if it's done fairly, then that's fine.
Now, you touched on something there I thought was interesting. I want to just... When we're ourselves, if we get beaten down when we unmask, I don't want that to come across as though there are individuals in our lives who are out to beat us down. They're not saying, as soon as they see our mask start to come off, attack. It's not an individual doing that. It really is this what we call the standard narrative, societal norms, how you're expected to behave in certain situations, how societal groups function. That's what it's all about. That's what the diversion part is, isn't it? That's what not being, by being divergent, we don't fit in with those systems. So whether we're at school, in lessons, or we weren't, or whether it then in work environments, it just, we don't fit properly.
I have an example. I was with my partner at the time. We'd gone out to a business dinner meeting where plus ones were invited, and there was an overseas business guest, and it was seen as quite a privilege to be at this table with these guests. Now, I was myself. I was got everyone laughing, and it was all quite a boring group, and so I think I made us all shuffle chairs around, like you do it at the family Christmas dues, and so you go and sit and chat next door to someone else, and I was talking to the guest and his wife, and all sorts of subject matters came up, and I was I think I brought a lot of fun to the table. Now, I got a big telling off after that. No, you're the plus one. You didn't let the others shine. The others were meant to shine. You don't work for the company. You're just an add-on. No, you can't do that. No, you literally must sit and smile and look nice and nod. And I thought, so that's another example of me being unmasked. Actually, I didn't just get some sort of indication that it wasn't right. I was actually told up front, no, that behaviour isn't welcome.
And so you just avoid those sorts of things in the future. Yeah. The confidence drops right off to be yourself. And that's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy circle, isn't it? It goes round and round and round. And that's how you can get beaten down. Again, that's not an individual necessarily saying, hey, you're a bad person. That's saying, hey, that's not how we do things in these situations. In another situation, that may have been fun at someone's Christmas dinner.
Yes, absolutely.
But from your story, I imagine from how you recall it, as everyone had a rather good time.
Yes, I personally didn't think I was.
And they remember you as what a lovely person, a partner of the person who worked for the company, therefore must be a lovely company. Let's give them a big contract.
I've been in several interviews, and sometimes you get callers phoning in, or in webinars, you get attendees asking questions. And one was from a lady saying, I have a friend that keeps talking about unmasking, but I don't know what that means. And so I just wanted to go back to this terminology. As ADHDers, we use them all the time, masking and unmasking. But for those that don't know about it, unmasking is literally feeling safe enough to take off all the veneers and let yourself shine through. And while for many neurotypical people, they'll just say, well, we do this every day. What's the big deal? Just be yourself. There's a lot of reasons why that can be quite exhausting or nerve-wracking after masking or partially masking for so long. So it is a big deal. And if people need help to unmask in a safe space, there are lots of people they can talk to as well. So if there's no one who they feel will give them that safe space and respect the vulnerability they're showing, there are ADHD coaches and counsellors, and they can help with some strategies to do that for the individual.
Yes, because neurotypicals, people without ADHD, they do. I wouldn't say they unmask. They don't mask. I don't think they mask. I think they say, I go into this social situation or this place and I'm being myself. I'm not being someone else. I'm not a fraud. I'm just very comfortable and happy to do this and be like this. And then they would look at us and say, so why can't you just do that? Because our brains don't work like your brain. Our brain's different. It's as simple as that,
Also, too, with the masking, it's not. We're not a completely different person. We're not. It's still us.
A version of us.
Yes, it's a version of us. Correct. We're not. We haven't faked our personality for those people that we've ever worked with or relationships. We haven't faked it, but there are times where, damn it, we have really controlled to our own detriment some of our behaviours for other people's benefit.
And things we wanted to say. go over and over and over afterwards things we wanted to say or didn't say or should have said or said wrongly, just to suit other people in that situation. It doesn't mean that we've got this kind of mad, vicious mind that wants to come out and cause chaos and upset everyone. It doesn't mean we want to turn it all upside down just for the chaotic sake of it. We're not anarchists. You know, it's not one extreme or the other. I don't know if we can explain it any better. Do you? I think that's pretty much, hopefully, nailed it for people.
So there you go. That's masking. That's why we mask. And we can mask in any sort of places, whether it be work environment, within relationships, you name it, if we feel that we need to. It's done intentionally and or unintentionally, and we don't even know it is a thing until sometimes after our ADHD diagnosis. So there you go. Cool.